Let me paint you a picture of absolute automotive insanity. It's 2005, and while Ferrari, Porsche, and Ford are spending hundreds of millions on supercars, an economist from Florida builds one in his garage that beats them all. The Mosler MT900S weighed around 2,200 pounds. That's roughly 40% lighter than a Porsche 911 GT3. It hits 60 in 3.1 seconds, matching the Ford GT while costing the same as a Ferrari 360, and absolutely nobody has ever heard of it. This is the greatest supercar story never told. Before we dive into the car, we need to talk about the madman who built it. Warren Mosler isn't some eccentric billionaire with a racing hobby. He's a hedge fund manager and economist who decided that building supercars was a perfectly reasonable side project. Picture this: a guy who writes papers on monetary theory looking at a Ferrari and thinking, I could do better. That's either genius or clinical insanity. And honestly, the line between those two has never been thinner. But here's where it gets absolutely unhinged. This wasn't Mosler's first rodeo. In 1985, yes, 1985, he founded Consulier Industries and built the Consulier GTP. That car was so ridiculously fast that it started winning IMSA races against Corvettes and Porsches in 1991. The response from the racing establishment? They didn't celebrate American innovation. They penalized it into oblivion. Mosler's car was hit with crippling weight penalties that made it uncompetitive. I wish I was making this up. Let that sink in. A car so dominant that the solution wasn't build faster cars. It was change the rules so this guy can't compete anymore. Mosler's response? He offered a $100,000 bounty to anyone who could beat his car. Nobody collected. The Consulier GTP was hit with crippling weight penalties and effectively regulated out of competition, not because it cheated, but because it was too good. That's not a failure, that's a resume item. So naturally, because Warren Mosler apparently doesn't understand the concept of quit while you're ahead, he started working on something even more insane. The MT900 project began in the late 90s, and by 2001, the first prototype emerged. But the car we're talking about today, the MT900S, arrived in 2005 as the street-legal weapon that would put Florida on the supercar map. Well, theoretically. The marketing department seemed to have missed that memo. Let's talk about what makes this car absolutely bonkers. Starting with weight. The MT900S tipped the scales at approximately 2,200 pounds in road-going trim. 2,200. That's roughly the same as a Mazda Miata, except with 435 horsepower instead of 150. For context, a 2005 Ford GT weighed 3,400 pounds. A Porsche 911 GT3 was around 3,050 pounds. The MT900S was giving up over 1,000 pounds to the Ford GT. And that's not a typo. How do you build a supercar that weighs less than an economy sedan? You steal technology from fighter jets. The MT900S used a carbon fiber and aluminum honeycomb monocoque chassis from a company called Teklam, the same people who build structures for the aerospace industry. The entire chassis tub weighed approximately 90 kilograms. That's under 200 pounds for the structural core of the entire car. Ferrari was still relying on conventional aluminum construction. Mosler was building spaceships. Now here's where purists might clutch their pearls. The engine. The MT900S used a Mosler-tuned all-aluminum Chevrolet LS6 V8, the same 5.7-liter engine from the Corvette Z06, 435 horsepower at 6,800 RPM, 400 pound-feet of torque at 4,800. Is it exotic? No. Is it reliable, powerful, and relatively affordable to maintain? Absolutely. Mosler chose engineering pragmatism over badge snobbery, and the stopwatch didn't care about nationalities. The suspension was equally obsessive. Double wishbone front, double wishbone rear, with fully adjustable coilover dampers. Race variants even featured pushrod suspension, the same inboard technology from Formula One cars. While many supercars balanced comfort and cost, Mosler went full racing geometry. Every corner, every bump, every high-speed transition, engineered for maximum grip. This wasn't a street car pretending to be a race car. It was a race car tolerating the street. Here's where the magic happens. Mathematics. 435 horsepower divided by approximately 2,200 pounds equals roughly 5 pounds per horsepower. The Ford GT, about 7.8 pounds per horsepower. The Ferrari 360 Challenge Stradale, around 6.3. The Porsche 911 GT3, approximately 7.5. The MT900S wasn't just competitive, it was playing an entirely different game. While other manufacturers threw more power at the problem, Mosler subtracted weight. The gearbox tells you everything about Mosler's priorities. A 6-speed manual from Graziano, a company that supplies transmissions to actual racing teams. No automatic option, no paddle shifters, no compromises for customers who wanted a supercar for grocery runs. If you couldn't drive stick, Mosler politely suggested you buy a different car. That's not arrogance, that's quality control through intimidation. The MT900S was designed by Rod Trenna, and here's where it gets interesting. This guy designed the Corvette C5. But when he joined Mosler, he did something revolutionary for 2001. He designed the entire car using only computers. No clay models, no physical prototypes until the final design was locked. Everything was done in Unigraphics CAD software. In an era when Ferrari was still sculpting clay by hand, Mosler was building digital spaceships. The body wasn't designed to win beauty contests. It was designed to cheat physics. Every curve, every vent, every surface served an aerodynamic purpose. The result is a car that looks like a Le Mans prototype got lost on its way to the track and accidentally became street legal. Some called it ugly. Those people clearly don't understand that form follows function. And when function means faster than a Ferrari, the form is automatically beautiful. The handling numbers are equally insane. The MT900S pulled around 1.08 G on the skid pad. For reference, most sports cars consider anything over 1 G to be exceptional. The contemporary Porsche 911 GT3 managed around 1.02 G. The Ferrari 360 Challenge Stradale hit approximately 1.05 G. The Mosler wasn't just faster in a straight line, it cornered harder than cars costing twice as much. And this is where we need to pause and appreciate what's happening here. A small company from Florida, not Maranello, not Stuttgart, not Detroit, was building a car that could embarrass the entire European establishment. If you're enjoying this story of automotive David versus corporate Goliaths, hit that subscribe button, because this channel exists to tell the stories that the mainstream automotive press ignores. Now, let's see how the MT900S performed against specific competitors. Let's start with the Ford GT, the car that was supposed to be America's supercar comeback. The GT had 550 horsepower, over 100 more than the Mosler, but it also weighed 3,400 pounds, over 1,000 more than the Mosler. 0 to 60, the Ford GT did it in 3.3 seconds. The MT900S, 3.1. The car with less power was faster, because Warren Mosler understood physics better than Ford's entire engineering department. The Ferrari 360 Challenge Stradale, Maranello's stripped-down track weapon, weighed around 2,800 pounds and made 400 horsepower. 0 to 60 in 4.1 seconds. The MT900S, around 2,200 pounds, 435 horsepower, 3.1 seconds. A full second faster to 60. For roughly similar money, $189,000 versus about $190,000, you got a car that was faster, lighter, and built in Florida. The horror. The Porsche 911 GT3 of that era, a car worshipped by track enthusiasts, hit 60 in 4.3 seconds and weighed around 3,000 pounds. The MT900S was a full 1.2 seconds faster to 60 and roughly 800 pounds lighter. On a track, that difference is an eternity. The GT3 was excellent, but the Mosler was playing a different game entirely. Here's where it gets truly insane. Pricing. The MT900S cost $189,000. That was Ford GT money, Ferrari 360 money, and you got a car that could embarrass both. The problem? Nobody knew about it. Ferrari had decades of brand building. Porsche had racing pedigree. Mosler had a guy in Florida and some really good spreadsheets. Marketing matters, even when you're right. The MT900 proved itself on tracks worldwide. GT championship wins, endurance racing victories. The car competed at Daytona, in British GT, in Spanish GT championships. It wasn't just fast in magazine tests, it was fast when it mattered. But while Ferrari failures make headlines, Mosler victories barely made footnotes. The automotive press was too busy genuflecting at established brands. As if the MT900S wasn't extreme enough, Mosler introduced the Photon variant, stripped even further, somewhere under 2,000 pounds, with upgraded aerodynamics. This thing was essentially a barely legal race car with turn signals. The Photon represented the absolute edge of what could be called street legal. Mosler's engineers apparently thought the regular version was too comfortable. Total MT900S production? Approximately 20 units. That's not a limited edition strategy. That's the reality of hand-building supercars without corporate backing. Each car was essentially custom built. No assembly line, no robot welders, just craftsmen in Florida building weapons of mass acceleration. Today, that rarity makes survivors incredibly valuable. Who bought these things? People who prioritized lap times over badge prestige. Track day enthusiasts who wanted to actually be fast, not just look fast. A handful of collectors who recognized value before the market caught up. These weren't posers buying Ferraris for restaurant valet drops. These were drivers buying the fastest thing they could find. Warren Mosler's engineering philosophy was simple. Weight is the enemy of everything. Adding power requires more fuel, more cooling, more structure. Removing weight makes everything better. Acceleration, braking, handling, fuel efficiency. Every supercar manufacturer knew this. Mosler was just the only one crazy enough to actually build a car around that principle with no compromises. Among early high-profile owners, George Lucas. Yes, the George Lucas. The man who created Star Wars apparently recognized that the MT900S was the automotive equivalent of science fiction. When the guy who invented hyperspace drives buys your car, that's validation. Not that Mosler needed validation. The lap times spoke for themselves. Some questioned whether such a light car could be safe. The answer? The carbon monocoque chassis was incredibly rigid, racing car levels of structural integrity. The MT900S used the same safety engineering as Le Mans prototypes. Light doesn't mean weak, it means intelligent design. Mosler wasn't cutting corners. He was eliminating unnecessary weight while maintaining or exceeding safety standards. Why didn't more people know about this car? Simple. No advertising budget. Ferrari spends millions on marketing. Porsche sponsors racing series. Mosler had word of mouth and occasional magazine tests. The automotive media ecosystem runs on advertising dollars, and Mosler wasn't paying to play. Excellence without marketing is just a secret. For track day enthusiasts, the MT900S was the ultimate weapon. Light enough to not destroy tires immediately. Powerful enough to embarrass everything. Simple enough to maintain without a Ferrari-certified technician. The car was designed for people who actually drive, not people who park at car shows. To understand why weight matters so much, consider this. Every 100 pounds you remove is like adding horsepower, but free. It improves braking, it improves handling, it improves acceleration. The MT900S wasn't just a little lighter than competitors. It was a different category. Comparing it to a Ford GT was like comparing a fighter jet to a bomber. Production ended around 2010, partly due to the global financial crisis, partly because hand-building 20 supercars was never going to be a sustainable business model. Mosler Automotive eventually wound down operations. The man who built cars that got regulated out of racing for being too fast, who embarrassed Ferrari and Porsche on their own turf, who proved that American engineering could match anyone, simply faded away. Not with a bang, but with a shrug from an industry that never appreciated him. Today, if you can find an MT900S for sale, expect to pay significantly more than the original $189,000 price tag. Collectors are finally waking up to what enthusiasts knew all along. This car represents something special, not just performance, but philosophy. The idea that one man with the right knowledge could challenge the entire automotive establishment and win. The MT900S isn't just a fast car, it's a statement. It proves that innovation doesn't require billion-dollar budgets, that engineering excellence can come from anywhere, even a hedge fund manager's garage in Florida, that the establishment isn't always right, and sometimes the outsider sees things more clearly. In an era of corporate supercars built by committee, the MT900S was built by conviction. In 2025, when every supercar announcement comes with a billion-dollar development budget and marketing campaign, the Mosler MT900S reminds us that speed isn't about money. It's about understanding physics, about having the courage to challenge assumptions, about being willing to look stupid until the stopwatch proves you right. Warren Mosler wasn't crazy. He was just ahead of everyone else. So, here's the question that should keep Ferrari and Porsche executives awake at night. If an economist in Florida could build a car that beat their best efforts with a fraction of the budget, what else are they getting wrong? How many other automotive assumptions are just expensive traditions? The MT900S didn't just beat supercars, it exposed the entire industry. Around 2,200 pounds, 3.1 seconds to 60, around 1.08 G on the skid pad, George Lucas among early high-profile owners, regulated out of racing for being too fast. This should be one of the most celebrated supercars in history. Instead, it's a footnote. But maybe that's what makes it special. The MT900S doesn't need your approval. It has the lap times. Next time on Supercar Chronicles, we're staying with American Exotica, the Saleen S7, the car that proved America could build a proper hypercar before everyone forgot it existed. Steve Saleen's twin-turbo monster that hit 248 miles per hour and still couldn't get the respect it deserved. Same story, different hero. If you've made it this far, you understand what this channel is about. Not just fast cars, but the stories behind them, the underdogs, the forgotten legends, the engineering marvels that marketing forgot. Subscribe if you want more. Leave a comment telling me which obscure supercar deserves its own episode. And remember, the fastest car isn't always the most famous. Sometimes it's just the best-kept secret. This is Supercar Chronicles, where legends are remembered and physics always wins.